you have been doing some extraordinary activism. This year, you stood for the Scottish Family Party in Rutherglen, and you got a very respectable vote for that party. You also set the internet on fire when you told Humza Yousaf to go forth and multiply, as it were. And tell me about that video, though, because I know it got, well, it was hundreds of thousands of views, certainly on TikTok. Last time I saw it on TikTok, it had over 600 and something like 650,000 views.
So there's only one place now that the video remains in its entirety, which is on my Twitter. So there's been various uploads of the video that have went to hello Dominic and hello everyone giving me comments. So the video was uploaded multiple times to TikTok, my own account, during the election campaign and stuff. And again, that was taken down off my account. Then it was uploaded to another account. That was taken down. Then Force for Good uploaded the video. That was taken down. Every iteration of the video, as far as I'm aware, has been taken off TikTok. So, I mean, to me, it's the only place that you could put content that you can remain confident that it's going to remain there is probably Twitter. That's about the only place I would sort of deposit content these days. It's a shame because, like you're saying, these different iterations of the video, they had 500,000 views, 600,000 views, 750,000 views. There's loads of different versions of it that got, I mean, overall it's probably 2 or 3 million views combined. But yeah, it's been a big year for us. We're going to be ploughing on into the new year. It's going to be hard to sort of top what was done last year, as I'm sure it's just, and we just keep building and building and building. Alistair, you know what it's like. It's sometimes these activism things, they either hit or they miss. That one was certainly a hit, but
what I've discovered is if you're in the activist game, if you're in the activist business, then there's always opportunities, and it's not so much a matter of topping something, it's just keeping the activism going, maintaining it, and very often it just happens naturally. It's not something that can really be planned for in advance. It's seeing opportunities when they arise, thinking, are we in a position to capitalize upon that? Because very often one's not in a position, because it's a day that you can't make it, or it's going to you're not able to get there, or the organization doesn't have the money, or whatever it may be. But if things come together, then it's going to work out, and especially if you've got people who can take it forward through video, through social media platforms and things like that. And so it's the opportunity is always there. It's just a matter of things coming together in such a way that enable you to take advantage of it. So it's about building the ability to take advantage of things when they arise.
Slightly disappointed though, Alistair, is that once I had called out Humza Yousaf, I thought, what that's going to do, Alistair? That's the domino. I've kicked over the first domino, and then the rest of the dominoes are going to fall along. I.e., the other dominoes would be other people calling them out, or other politicians out, or of the same nature. But I mean, it's not really coalesced. It's not really happened. I'm hoping that does come into the new year. But that's my only disappointment. Is know that I mean, the video went viral. It went fantastic on a personal standpoint, but on a sort of on the main purpose of it was to get people to stand up to the politicians, to call them out, to hold them to account, and that's just not really happened. So I mean, that's my the only sort of disappointment I've got about it. But other than that, I mean, we just have to keep encouraging similar type stuff, right?
Yeah, I think so, and it also very much depends upon context as well, because the system won't allow you to go up to a politician on the street and call them out if you if you do that, you're gonna get a visit, unfortunately. Um, we've seen that in Westminster and so on. Although there is a bloke who seems to be allowed to do that, which is that the anti-Brexit guy who's always kind of hassling politicians on the street. He seems to be getting away with it. But if I think the best places to do it are in formal contexts such as you did, which was at a show, which was at an event. You were in the audience. At hustings, at things like that, where it's expected, that's part of the political debate. And the number of people who find themselves in that situation is always going to be few and far between. And
Yes.
the number of people who have got the cajones to stand up and make a scene are, well, the very, very few people. So I wouldn't be that surprised, but I know exactly what you mean about it. And
Well,
it would be good if there were more.
You bring up a couple of good points there. It needs to set in circumstance, right? So you need all your ducks in a row in order to sort of pull this off. And you said maybe it's an event at the Fringe, it's a hustings event, so forth. But the hustings event this year that I was at, none of the big parties decided to show up. So the one time that I've got, or even members of the public, had a chance to question their the big three, big four parties. They didn't even bother showing up, Alistair. So they can't face public scrutiny, certainly. And when they did show up, the hustings that they did show up to was a closed studio event where there was no one else allowed in bar the candidates. But I certainly made their life a bit more difficult that day. So overall, I think, we're going to sort of turbocharge our activism going into the next year. We're going to make sure that the politicians are afraid to book a Fringe venue. There's no way the SNP are going to be doing any Fringe events this year. I'm sure of it. Maybe we can catch a few other ones, but this is the politicians stepping into the comedians' domain, i.e. the Fringe, is just not one that people are going to really put up with for so much longer, because people like me will be in the audience calling them names, holding them a coon, hassling them, making their lives a bit more difficult than they normally would see, because obviously these guys are in a very sheltered echo chamber, these politicians, and they don't get that much interaction with the public as you would think. Holyrood to me is a big creche where they get dropped off in the morning, picked up at night, and they're just, they're just it's sort of it's childlike, the behaviour that happens in Holyrood, and then the actual policies and stuff emanating from Holyrood. It's just the worst, and it can only be sort of described as like a creche for children who.
Yeah. There was yesterday they had their budget.
Yes.
And there's been various commentary about it, but as far as the SNP and the concept of having a budget is concerned, all they can really go for is to continue to tax the ever decreasing number of quote unquote rich people that there are in Scotland, which is not very many. I mean, I've lived all my life in Scotland. I've met one person that I would say was quote unquote rich in my entire life, and that was just kind of a passing meeting. That I don't know where these rich people in Scotland are and what circles they move in. I mean, maybe certainly in London or whatever, you could find them. Maybe there are rich people in Edinburgh or something like that, but it's not like there's lots and lots of them. No. I mean, most people in Scotland are just struggling to get by week to week, month to month, and so.
Yeah, I had to scope out the 1 million. I mean, I've had the. I wouldn't say it's an opportunity to talk to rich people, because really we rub shoulders with people of all different walks of life every single day. You don't know if a guy is rich, a woman is rich, just by talking to them in the street. But I have had a lot of conversations with people who are moneyed up, so to speak. And they're just exactly the same as us, Alistair. They're asking the same questions. They're like, how are we supposed to function? How am I supposed to pay my staff? How am I supposed to do this, that, and that? Because, I mean, a lot of the rich, quote unquote, people in Scotland are people whose, there's a huge amount of people's livelihoods riding on either this person's business, this person's company, in order to provide these mortgages and stuff going on in the future. So a lot of the pressure mounted on the rich people is quite massive in terms of the human sort of what you're providing all these families. But we're just making it more and more difficult for business in Scotland. I've seen that there's a large section of the budget aimed at education and skills, and none of it actually gives us what we need in order to improve the schools. It's just, let's just toss more money and hope that it gets better.
Yes, yes, yes. Indeed. In fact, I was reading this article today. It says, "Where was the plan to boost growth?" by somebody writing, as it happens, in the Daily Mail. And he points out something. He says that many of those impacted by the new tax band are going to be overly remunerated managers in the public sector, which is probably where the money is, actually, in Scotland. Although he then goes on to say these never-ending increases will impact on top talent in our fast disappearing private sector, particularly in the tech sector, a market the Scottish so-called government purportedly wants to grow. And no doubt that's going to be the case. And it's going to raise 82 million. Apparently these new tax increases will raise 82 million, although other think tanks think it will be actually less than 82 million once other trends have been factored
when most Scots realise that they're getting sort of, for the lack of a better term, shafted in terms of taxation, they could probably just move to Wales, to England, and face less taxation. Maybe their business functions better in England. So we might see people just saying, you know what, it's time to move.
That's right.
We're going to be saving an extra X amount of $3-4 a year. We may as well move. It's because you're not getting anything for the extra money you're paying for up here in Scotland. That's the thing. In fact, your public services are like, public services. What public services? The roads are absolutely just. It's like twinned with the Gaza Strip here in Edinburgh. Some of the roads. In fact, a bombing would make it improved. Some of these roads are so bad.
I know what you mean. I went through to Edinburgh today, and I was standing at the bus stop to get in, and there's this massive pothole just a few yards up from the and I mean about almost like a foot deep, like at least 9 inches deep. And I was standing at the bus stop, and I thought, I'm going to move, because if a car comes flying along, hits that, loses control, maybe it's some person, they lose control, they're going to plow into me. So I actually stood back from the bus stop, and I moved about 20 yards, 15 yards further down the road, because that was a possibility, because cars were coming flying by. I think something hits that, it's just going to go boing.
It's just
lose control.
It's funny, but in Edinburgh, I was walking along George Street, and what's the first thing that I see? The first time I'd seen it in George Street, 3 tents, homeless tents, outside one of the. I think it's the old Hollister shop, or the old. It's just 5 paces away from Starbucks. I mean, that's the first time I've ever seen that in Edinburgh. And George Street's supposed to be the sort of affluent shopping area, and you're just bypassing homeless tents straight away. So I've never seen this before in my life.
No.
And it's not like I've got an aversion to homeless people or anything like that. It's just that I've never seen the tents.
No, I've never seen that.
I've never seen tents. So it's just we're
going
to rack and ruin here. I mean, Edinburgh is just getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
Every passing day.
Yeah, yeah. You notice that I was doing some googling last night. For some reason, I was looking. I ended up in Tokyo on the map, Google Maps,
Brilliant.
and so I'm just going along the streets in Tokyo, looking at them, pristine. You know,
Yeah.
if in Glasgow, like they don't pick up the leaves, and so all the pavements now are just like muddy, right? And it's December. Okay, all this
Mhm.
should have been
Yeah, of
done in
course.
October, November, and just everywhere you go, it's just like mud now. And this is just maybe not in the centre of Glasgow, but certainly in the areas outside.
Well,
It's just like been abandoned.
I,
It's like,
I,
well,
I
what am I
certainly,
paying
um,
council tax for?
I certainly hope that the bin men in Glasgow are getting a sort of respite from the rat attacks with the freezing bitter cold coming in. Maybe it's keeping the rats at bay. But again, this is like um, it's part and parcel of living in a big city. Remember, Susan Aiken. I mean, the rats are everywhere. You can't
Yeah,
walk around some of the streets
yeah.
without stepping on one. But it's part and parcel of living in a big city these days. There's huge amounts of crime, huge amounts of rats. There's garbage on the streets. Your potholes will never get fixed, and you'll get taxed to the max. Welcome to Scotland.
Yes,
What a
yes.
great time!
As Derek says here, they don't clean the drains, and so every time it rains, you get flooding. That's
Yeah,
right, and most of the drains they're not even blocked. It's just like masses of
of
leaves
leaves. Yeah.
that have coagulated there, making things worse. But talking about making things better, I
Yes.
was interested to watch a video of yours where it was, I think, a 20-minute speech that you gave at the Scottish Family Party
Mhm.
conference, which was 2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago now, I don't quite
Mhm.
know. But you came up with a very interesting policy to improve education in schools. Do you remember when you spoke about the phones? Do you want to elaborate upon
Well,
that?
I mean,
Because I
how,
think
how,
it's
how
it's,
can I
it's
forget?
interesting.
It's so Scottish. I mean, I generally write speeches for activism's purposes, for to get a point across. Um, but I mean, writing a conference speech is a bit different, Alistair, where you're sort of already sort of you're geeing up the base, you're coming up with new ideas and concepts, and you're just trying to bring everyone together, for the common good. So um, what I described as an era defining or an epoch defining policy is the total banning of smartphones and devices from schools. Um, and it
Mm.
is, it might, the way I say it's era and epoch defining is with this race, this digital race that we're in, every, smartphone's improving at the rate of knots, every single iteration of the smartphone, this digital rat race that we've entered into, um, we don't know the ramifications of the likes of social media has on an adult's brain. Never mind the ramifications it has on a whole generation of children's brains and the effects that it will have. So, I mean, see, when you have these conversations with people, and the more conversations I have with people about this topic, the more sound my reasoning becomes. I was talking to a guy, he says, sometimes I'm just scrolling TikTok and 2 or 3 hours will go by.
Right.
Uh, and you're like, well, okay. And do you think that's good, a good thing or a bad thing? I think it's obviously a bad thing. Is where the times went. I've not learned anything. Um,
Exactly.
and
Not. It's not as if every single video you learn something
no
from it. You do learn stuff on TikTok, though. I learned several things on TikTok, very interesting
dances.
things.
How to do the dances and the movements.
Well, there's that, I suppose. But seed oils, that was a big thing, which is bad for you, apparently.
Yes.
And so now I'm very much just back to lard and tallow, like
Yeah.
the various fitness instructors tell us.
Hmm.
And in fact, I go to Aldi and I buy the fattiest mince possible,
Brilliant.
25% fat mince,
Yeah.
because I think we've been lied to, and so much I'm prepared to believe that fat is actually now good for you.
Yeah, why not? I'm just going
Why
to
not?
we'll inject some straight mainline some fat right into those veins,
Yeah,
Alistair,
yeah,
and
and
you will be right as rain.
it hasn't done me any harm. I have to say, I'm still able to keep the weight off to an extent. So
I mean, keeping it to the education
exactly,
system again, right? So, in my conference speech, I gave the problems first and then the solution. So then, in my speech, I go and say, you know, um, we have a pupil at school, and um, they're a bully, and they're going to go attack another child or a teacher. So what do? They hit their phone and then they hit the record button, okay? And then they fire into the attack, which is a big problem. So will that or does that problem exist with or without the phone? I don't think it does. But let me run through some stats on or some improvements that happen when you take phones out of schools.
yeah.
When you
Go
take
ahead.
phones out of schools, you get enhanced student engagement because it minimizes distractions in the classroom, promotes student engagement, and it eliminates the use of all devices. Improved classroom management. So this is a huge reason why teachers will overwhelmingly support it. So teachers regain control of their classroom, foster more positive relationships with their students. And when the strangest thing that I thought, the number one thing that I thought was interesting was when smart devices were taken from schools, staff intention improved.
Oh yeah.
It's instrumental in retaining school staff and cultivating a more pleasant work environment. Improved safety and security. Students cannot use their devices for unauthorized activities or inappropriate content. So, I mean, these are all very obvious things that I think we need to be tackling them straight away.
Is it possible though? Um, um, I don't understand fully, but is it possible to have like a digital free zone where you can't actually access it in the school premises? You can't actually access the internet through a
Um,
phone or
so the company that most people are see, the company that I was using as a workaround is a company that operates in America. So we're not the only country facing this issue with schools, with phones, with digital media, with bullying, with TikTok videos. We're nowhere near the first. We're probably miles behind. In fact, America's the test case for this.
uh-huh.
So America, what they do is your phone goes in a pouch. Your pouch is sealed magnetically, and in order to open the pouch, you have to come outside school and touch it on a pedestal, and it unlocks the pouch. The pouch is a Faraday cage,
Oh yeah, yeah,
Alistair,
yeah.
if you are familiar with what that does. So that just blocks any signal to the phone whatsoever. So it's effectively you've got your phone in airplane mode for the entire duration of the school day, right? And then once you leave the school, boom, your phone's back in your pocket. You're never out with the possession of your phone, which is a thing for kids. I mean, you don't want to be handing your phone over to someone and waiting for it to come back. But I mean, the issue is talking to my wee niece about this. I said, well, ideally, I wouldn't even need to have a technology there in order to ban phones. Ideally, Alistair, and it might seem, remarkable, but if I was a head teacher at school says all phones are banned, what's going to happen the next day, Alistair? People are still going to bring their phones to school. It's still going to happen. And that was the answer my wee niece gave me. So we have to implement this technology to make it impossible for the students to bring their phones to school. It's more protecting the future generation than it is adults. Adults are almost fully ingrained, engrossed in this digital age. But we should at least, at the very minimum, shield children up to a certain age from this digital sort of culture that we're in, Alistair. You see what I'm
Oh,
saying? It's like
100%, and I think that's really, really important as well for the development of the brain, also, and the ability to be able to concentrate, because something that social media is deliberately intended to do is to keep us constantly diverted, constantly looking at new stuff. As you say, much of which you don't learn from, some of which though you do learn from, and TikTok is, there's an awful lot of rubbish on there and a lot of bad stuff on there as far as grooming children is potentially, I believe, is concerned. But there's also some amazing information that you won't get on YouTube, that YouTube will ban, political, historical, economic, medical matters that don't go along with the system. So you do get some interesting stuff on there, so long as you've got the brain to be able to process it suitably. We're coming on for the top of the hour. Thanks very much for that thought, though, and I think the idea of digitally being able to police, not so much police, but sort out the issues facing children as far as education is concerned is a big issue that none of the political parties are really addressing. And when they do address it, they get it wrong. In other words, they ban the good stuff.
Just similarly as well, I fully expect every political party with a sound basis to adopt this policy of ours, which is to ban phones. We've already seen types like the Wall Street Journal in America call for the absolute banning of phones in schools. But we expect other parties to pick this up and run with it, which is a great thing. But I also expect the other parties, the not so good parties, to say the opposite, Alistair. I expect the likes of the SNP and the Greens to say, no, we need a phone in every child's hand. We need a phone surgically attached to these children at all stages of life. We need them breastfed on the phone.
Digitally implanted in their brain, a recurring theme of Patrick Harvey talking about trans things or something like that, in order to keep them...
That's my nightmare sorted for tonight, Alistair. Thank you.
Sorry for that. But Debbie says really good idea for the phones. Absolutely. And that's one of the values of smaller parties, is that you can come up with ideas, run with them, and get them heard. Even that very, very
the
much
best
so.
thing is, Debbie, is that it can be implemented tomorrow at such a low expense, Debbie. And this is a thing that will not happen.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Niall, for coming on. I just wish you and your loved ones a very happy, great British Christmas.
Thank you very much. You and yourself as well.
Thank you, and a wonderful new year to
and
you.
Before I go as well, congratulations on completing your new book. I know it's quite an undertaking, taking on a book, so fantastic you've done it. And I know you've sort of cancelled a few shows the last month in order to get it done, so well done to you.
Thank you.
And I'll be purchasing a copy, right? So
Brilliant.
Thanks.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, now, all the best to you. Good night.
Good night, my friend. Bye-bye.
Cheers.